Hey, yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over my updated tier list with Black Bolt and White Flare legal. Black Bolt and White Flare are the brand new sets that are releasing and are expected to change up the metagame. So today I'm going to be going over where I currently think the top decks are standing. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And if there's any decks you think I missed, make sure to leave those down in the comments. But with that being said, let's hop into the tier list. So start off here, we're going to go over Miraidon. Now, Miraidon is a deck that kind of had fallen off. We see Joltik Box, that was, kind of the main lightning deck that was seeing success because Miraidon lost a lot of important cards with rotation. It lost Raichu, Rotom, Force Seal Stone, Luminion, a lot of really, really important cards, double Turbo Energy as well. So the deck didn't necessarily see a whole lot of success after all those cards left the standard format. However, it has gained back some powerful cards. For example, things like the Electric, which is really, really powerful, allowing you to get tons of energies onto the board. You still have access to Magneton too, but you now have a way to one-shot high HP Pokemon in that Zekrom that is coming out, replacing that Raichu. So Miraidon, in my opinion, does have a chance again in the format. From my testing, it is kind of a middle to bottom of tier B deck, but it is viable again, which is one of the things that gets me personally excited because I'm a Miraidon fan. Next up here, we have Gardevoir Jelly. Gardevoir with the Jellicent. This is a deck that has been seeing quite a bit of success in Japan. I'm going to put it in tier A. The deck is really, really powerful with that Jellicent being able to item lock the opponent, also paired up with things like TM De-Evolution. If your opponent evolves with a rare candy at the beginning of the game, you can TM Devo them with the Jellicent in the active, and then they can't use rare candy unless they find a gust effect, sometimes just trapping them out of the game. So that's really, really powerful. I think that this deck is really good. Having things like the Jellicent also help out quite a bit against Golden Go, which in my opinion was one of this deck's harder matchups before the Jellicent came in. So yeah, I think that Gardevoir with the Jellicent is still, Gardevoir in general is still very, very good. All right. Next up, we got Ethan's Typhlosion. And now this is a deck that, in my opinion, is pretty good. Now, the big thing that was holding this deck back was it just couldn't really consistently one-shot high HP Pokemon. But now that you have access to Brave Bengal, this deck, in my opinion, actually has a chance to see success. So, in my opinion, I have Ethan's Typhlosion in tier B, just giving access to a powerful one prize attacker to actually one-shot high HP two prizers is really, really powerful. I think this deck has a lot of potential. Now, the big question is do you want to play it with the Pidgeot or do you want to play it with the Dracoloak? So that's, something that I'm kind of trying to figure out. You could also play it with Zoroark. So you need to find a good draw engine with it. But I think, if you are able to get consistently set up, which was one of the things this deck could sometimes struggle with, is actually being able to get set up, then this deck, in my opinion, has a ton of potential. Next up here, we have Golden Go Dragapult. In my opinion, this deck is still quite good. Yes, Jellicent is relatively annoying, but if you play a heavier boss count in Iron Bundle, the Jellicent isn't necessarily the end of the world. And I think this deck is pretty good right now in the format, so we're going to put it at the top of tier B. Next up here, we got Pure Dragapult. So this is the deck that Tord Reklev used to get top 4 at the most recent North American International Championships. This deck is quite good in my opinion. Still very, very powerful, and I currently have it in tier A. In my opinion, is the preferred way to play Dragapult just because of how consistent it is. You're playing, just thick counts of pretty much every single card, and you're able to achieve your strategies pretty consistently. So the one problem with this deck is the Gardevoir matchup. The Gardevoir matchup is not great, but you do pretty good against the majority of the format, aside from Gardevoir. And even against, Gardevoir, you can still beat them because Itchy Pollen is really, really annoying, and let's say Halucha plus, Phantom Dive. That's something that's very, very scary for them. So yeah, this deck is very, very good, and I currently have it in tier A. Next up here, we got Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt still a solid deck. Most recently won the Champions League. We saw the Owless Bolt deck see a lot of success over there. Also at the most recent Singapore Master Ball League as well, Owless Bolts did pretty well there too. So yeah, I think there's, two viable ways to play Raging Bolt, and I think the deck is very, very solid. So yeah, I think it's kind of a bottom of tier A deck. It's Gardevoir and Dragapult matchups are not amazing, but it's close into pretty much everything, and that's what matters. You're consistent, you're able to achieve your strategies pretty much every single game, which, really allows us to pick up a lot of wins just because your deck functions at a higher level than a lot of the other top decks in the standard format. Next up here, we got Charizard Pidgeot. This is a deck that's been seeing a lot of hype recently. In my opinion, it's quite solid overall. Can sometimes run into some consistency problems. Does have kind of shaky Dragapult matchups, and the Gardevoir matchup is very close as well. But I do think this deck is very good. We saw Gabriel Fernandez in the senior division. He was able to win with Charizard Pidgeot with the max belt, and I think that is the preferred way to play this archetype. So yeah, I think this deck is pretty good overall, and I currently have it at the top of tier B. Next, we got Dragapult Dusknoir. I think Dragapult Dusknoir right now is just kind of weaker pure Dragapults. It's sometimes hard to justify using the Dusknoirs in some situations. Your Gardevoir matchup is slightly better, but it doesn't really save a whole lot of other matchups. Helps a little bit against like Charizard, but I think just having the pure consistency that this build has is really, really valuable at the moment. And sometimes this build can not necessarily set up as much as you would like. So yeah, I think this deck is still pretty good. Probably going to put it at the top of tier B, but I currently am a big fan of the more straightforward variant. Next up here, we got Grimmsnarl. I think Grimmsnarl gets a big boost from the new set because you have access to Air Balloon. This Air Balloon is also really good in Charizard because it means if you're playing up against a Gardevoir deck and they try and use Mind Bend to force you into confusion flips, you can just slap on an Air Balloon and then retreat, go into the other Grimmsnarl, and hit without actually having to burn energies, which is really, really nice. So I think this deck is at the bottom of tier A. It does run into some consistency problems, which is kind of the thing that holds it back, but I do think this deck is pretty good when you can actually get it going. Next up, we got Flareon. I think just, the Evolutions deck is solid in general. Doesn't take a whole lot of bad matchups except against Gardevoir. Gardevoir is kind of a sketchy matchup, but the rest of the field is relatively winnable, and I think this deck is not bad right now. Next, we got Joltik Box. I think Joltik Box is pretty well positioned at the moment. Your really only bad matchup is Raging Bolt. Aside from Raging Bolt, you're pretty reasonable into the majority of other top decks in the format. There's just not a whole lot of outplay potential with this deck, so your ceiling, in my opinion, is relatively low with this deck. It's kind of hard to elevate it, but I think the biggest thing is like energy management with it. And if you're able to do that and you're able to set up and play well, I definitely think you have a lot of potential to go far with this deck. You just need to dodge Raging Bolt because the Raging Bolt matchup is very, very difficult for this deck, which is the reason as to why it's currently not in tier A and at the top of tier B. If Raging Bolt did not exist, this would potentially be a top 3 deck in the format. Next up here, we have Cynthia's Garchomp. I don't think this deck is too bad, actually. At the moment, the one thing that holds it back is, once again, the Raging Bolt matchup. Raging Bolt is a gatekeeper on a lot of these decks, and Cynthia's Garchomp is unfortunately one of the casualties to that. So, yes, this deck is, solid overall, but its Gardevoir matchup is very sketchy, and its Bolt matchup is not great as well. But it has some potential, and I think is pretty good. Next up, we got Ho-Oh Armarouge. I currently have it at the top of tier C. Lots of potential. Yes, it does gain the Prism energy. However, its consistency is a huge issue and doesn't really have a stable draw engine. So a lot of the time just doesn't set up as it should. So currently I have that in tier C. Hydreigon as well, tier C as well. The brand new Hydreigon is, kind of cool. You could potentially play it with the TM Blindside and Ignition energy, but I don't think this deck is insanely powerful. It's okay though. Next up, we got Pure Goldango. There's not really a whole lot of Pure Goldango, so we're just not going to include this, but if I would, it'd probably be at the bottom of tier B, or probably, honestly, yeah. We'll just put it here. I think the Dragapult variant is just strictly better at the moment. You could play the Pidgeot, which has been seeing a little bit of play, but yeah, I currently like the Dragapult engine in the deck. Next up here, we got Dragapult Charizard. I think this deck is pretty good. I have it currently right above Dragapult's Charizard. I think this deck is, solid overall. You can pretty much beat the majority of decks in the format. You're close into pretty much everything. You're not necessarily favored into everything. You're kind of just the deck that 50-50 is the format. And that's okay. I think there's a decent amount of outplay potential. You have lots of options with this deck. And from my testing, I've been pretty impressed overall. Your Gardevoir matchup is not as good as some people might think. Yes, you are able to hit weakness with the Charizard. However, with things, like Mind Bend being thrown at you, it can get a little bit scary. Also, if they're able to get 3 to 4 Monkey Dory on the board, they can create some pretty crazy plays. So yeah, I think this deck is pretty solid, but I don't necessarily think that it is top tier, but it's good. It's definitely quite good. Rocket's Mewtwo is a solid deck, but just falls short. It's a little too linear, and I think it's just average overall. Its damage output is okay, but it doesn't really impress a whole lot. It's just kind of okay in general. And at this point, I think all the decks kind of above the tier C are able to do like really, really cool things or like extremely powerful plays. And Rocket's Mewtwo is relatively predictable. So yeah, I think that Rocket's Mewtwo is pretty decent. It's not a bad deck, honestly. Honestly, we'll put Hydreigon and D because I think these decks are stronger than Hydreigon. So yeah, we'll put that down there. Next up, we got Gardevoir. Now we have been seeing Gardevoir without the jelly, and I still think it's a tier 1 deck. It just kind of depends whether or not you want better matchups against some of the TM evolution decks, or just decks that are trying to rare candy. I think that being like able to TM Devo with Jellicent at some point is really really powerful. But also you are a little bit more inconsistent. It's harder to fit things like the fourth Monkey Dory, the energy switch as well. So I do think that regular Gardevoir is also still very, very powerful. It saw success at the most recent Japan Nationals as well. So I think that both of these decks, are definitely tier 1. I just like having the Jellicent at the moment. But the pure Gardevoir is still very good and has a decent amount more of consistency. So anyways, that is going to do it today for the video. Let me know what you think of the tier list, and if there's any decks that I missed, feel free to leave those in the comments. But thanks so much for all the support as always. I appreciate it. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And this is Smart TCG. I'll speak with you guys again soon. Peace out, everyone.